The top two candidates in this cycle without question are Mike Vrabel and Ben Johnson. All right, welcome in. It's the Breer Report for New Year's Eve. Week 17 is in the books. We have 16 regular season games left. We have 29 NFL football games left total. And the last one we saw is where we're going to start. That is the one on Monday night between the Lions and the Niners. We're going to hit both teams here. But I want to start with the Niners. The effort is pretty much exactly what you would have hoped from Kyle Shanahan's group. They come in at 6-9, but a prideful team. Nick Bosa was off the charts last night. George Kittle played well. We saw stuff from Deebo Samuel, Fred Warner. You can still see the core of a very good team. And up until the end, Brock Purdy played pretty well too. Now you had the two picks, but you watch Brock Purdy and you started to see, okay, like that's the guy that the Niners could see themselves investing in for the next 5, 6, 7 years as their starting quarterback. And then he comes out of the game with what he said felt like an arm on fire. Coach Kyle Shanahan said after the game, it's an elbow injury. They're concerned with it being a nerve issue. They did check if he re-injured his UCL, which would be really bad. And it doesn't look like it's that. But obviously this complicates some things going into the offseason. Now, we've been over this a few times on the Breer Report over the course of the year. The Niners do view Brock Purdy as their guy. And really, like, I think, up until last night, you were looking at it and saying, it's not a matter of if, but when. It's not a matter of if, but how. They get a new contract done with Brock Purdy. Now, I think one thing that was going to complicate this was the traffic jam of big contracts the Niners have. They have almost $300 million in cap commitments for next year. So there are going to be some big decisions to make without even considering the quarterback. How does the quarterback fit into that? Do they play the quarterback's contract year out and then come back and try to renegotiate if negotiations get tough over the next few months? I think all of those things are fair questions to ask, and were fair questions to ask before the injury. Now, what the injury does is it hits pause on the whole thing, in my opinion. I think you have to look at this and say, okay, if this is a major elbow injury, this would be 2 major elbow injuries in 3 seasons. And it's something that you'd have to consider going into 2025. Now, we don't know that for sure yet. And he's going to undergo more testing today. But when you hear that it's a quarterback's throwing elbow and you hear the term nerve damage, like that's something that we, have to very much, I think you have to respect that. I think you have to respect like what that could mean, the seriousness of those sorts of issues, and where Brock Purdy is now. I think is wait and see. Let's see what happens with the testing later today. And when the results come back, I think you make a more, you can probably look at this in a more defined way. But as of right now, it's wait and see. I think obviously if it's not a serious thing, then you go back to where you were before the game, just as far as where his contract is. If this is a more serious issue, obviously, then this gets more complicated. And it was, again, already complicated by the exploding quarterback market and by the amount of big contracts the Niners have in their books and some of the financial stuff that they're going to have to sort through this offseason, regardless of and separate from the Purdy issue. All right, on the other side of this, the Lions said they were going to come in and play, and they came in and played. And if it weren't for Jake Moody, the Niners would have, I think, gone into the half up 24-13 here. Moody misses the field goal. The Lions come roaring back. I think we saw the culture of the Detroit Lions, kind of who they are and what they are. And it's so impressive to watch the way that they've been able to kind of fight through the injuries. The defense obviously was not perfect on Monday night, but in the end, they're able to get some stops when they needed them most. They get a guy like Reeves-Maybin back, and obviously he was a little rusty, but you start to see some of those guys are going to be filtering back in the coming weeks. They'll get Alex Anzalone back. They'll get David Montgomery back. If they make it to the Super Bowl, they get Hayden Hutchinson back. And I just, I think you have to be so impressed by how this team continues to roll with the punches and continues to be able to win different ways. And whatever way they're required to win, they're able to win that way. They can win with their running game. Last night, they won throwing the ball. They won highlighting guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jamison Williams has the 2 touchdowns. One on a beautiful, beautiful hook and ladder. they're able to win on defense, being resourceful, and know that, again, wasn't a perfect effort last night, but that's a Niners offense that's still plenty capable. And the Lions were able to get the stops they needed at the end. So I think you have to give the Lions a lot of credit for the resourcefulness. And now they have a massive, massive game against a Vikings team that is sort of morphing into a second Titan in the NFC North, like a second, like real heavyweight in the NFC North. Both those teams are now 14-2. The Vikings showed us a lot in holding off the Packers. And I just thought the aggression at the end of that game and the trust and faith they had in Sam Darnold to put it in his hands in a situation where a lot of coaches would have just closed it down and run the ball and forced the Packers to use their timeouts. The Vikings went for the knockout blow, and they went for the knockout blow with Sam Darnold being the one that was throwing it. And so I can't wait for the game on Sunday night. Great story of two quarterbacks that are on that were let go by the teams that drafted them within the top 5 picks, in Sam Darnold and Jared Goff. Tough, hard-nosed groups, and really, really well coached teams, really well rounded coaching staffs. I mean, you look at like the head coaches, Kevin O'Connell and Kevin O'Connell and Dan Campbell. You look at the offensive coordinators. Wes Phillips has done a better job than people think, and that's a stocked staff on that side of the ball with guys like Josh McCown on that side. The defensive coordinators, Aaron Glenn and Brian Flores. And then just very, very balanced, well-conceived rosters. Just cannot wait for Sunday night. It's going to be fantastic. All right. Our second topic is the coaching carousel, which for a lot of fans out there, I know this is what you're focusing on. And so I want to take a quick look at a couple of guys that I think are going to be the top candidates that everybody's going to want to talk to. And then we'll hit you with the teams that already have openings. So I would say the top 2 candidates in this cycle, without question, are Mike Vrabel, the former Titans coach, and Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator. Both those guys, I think, will be sought after by everyone. I think Ben Johnson, as we've been over before, is going to be more selective this time around. I think he's going to go in with the attitude, if I'm going to take an interview, then it's going to have to be a job that I can envision myself actually going and taking. And, I think that that's going to cause him to say no to some people. I don't think he wants to go on a world tour. And I think the idea going in will be, this is my vision, and can I enact my vision here? And are you sold on my vision? It's not selling myself or trying to get the job. It's, here's what I want to do, and can we do this together? And I think what he's going to be looking for in doing that is alignment with the general manager, whoever that general manager is, whether there's a sitting general manager or not. And then a recognition from ownership of things that have gone wrong and a willingness to fix those things. Now, as for Mike Vrabel, I think Mike Vrabel is going to be looking for some similar things. Based on what happened in Tennessee, my guess would be that Mike is going to look at it and say, I need to make sure that I've got ownership that's behind me. I got to make sure that I'm going to a place where front office politics aren't going to be a problem for me. And similar to Johnson, I think he's going to be looking for organizational alignment above anything else. And so can he find that alignment somewhere? Well, I would say the Raiders are one that could provide that potentially with the presence of Tom Brady within ownership. And there have certainly been a lot of murmurs in NFL circles about Mike Vrabel potentially replacing Antonio Pierce as the Raiders coach. The Giants are another one where, I think a guy who would certainly be near or at the top of his list in picking a general manager, Ryan Cowden, is already in-house and working for Joe Shane with the Giants. Mike Vrabel's defensive coordinator, Shane Bowen, is already there. So the Giants would make some sense. I think the Giants would see some Parcells qualities in Mike Vrabel. And then I think that the teams that have openings, he would be at the top of their list right now, right near or at the top of their list. I think the Jets, the Saints, the Bears, all have him up high on their list. So Mike Vrabel is going to, I think, attract a lot of attention, and I think he'll have multiple options. All right, then the teams that have openings right now, just kind of updating where they're at. The Bears, and we went over this in the column on Monday and in our Thursday night pregame show on Amazon. The Bears have gone through a vetting process. They've, in looking at all of their candidates, and they have a list that's wide ranging. Now, a couple of things logistically that are important here. Ryan Poles is running the search. And that's the way ownership wants it. I think ownership is aware that people have questions about what Kevin Warren's role in all of this is going to be. So, I think ownership has sort of structured it so it's clear that football operations is football operations, and that Ryan Poles will be running the search. Now, Kevin Warren's going to have a voice in the search, the same way George McCaskey's going to have a voice in the search. Just Ryan Poles is going to be the guy who's going to be running point. The other thing, the leader of men thing, which they've been very open about, what that's going to look like and what they're looking for going forward. Somebody who can affect change within their organization. It's been 15 years since they've won a playoff game. I think to some degree that has shifted just a little bit, where to some degree now that they've looked at it, they've seen what Caleb Williams looks like over the last month. They've seen Thomas Brown have to go from passing coordinator to offensive coordinator to head coach, and kind of the effect that's had on Caleb Williams. And so I think, that's added a little twist to the leader of men thing, where it's like, if it's not a quarterbacks guy specifically, then it better be a guy who's got a clear plan for the quarterback. I'd expect that's a job that Ben Johnson will take an interview with. I think Mike Vrabel will be near or at the top of their list. I think joining Vrabel in that leader of men category, Aaron Glenn, the other coordinator in Detroit, the defensive coordinator there, will also be on their list. A couple of guys that have connections to that place. Cliff Kingsbury coached Caleb Williams at USC in 2023. They went through a lot together. It was a tough year, but they came out of it with a good relationship. So I think Cliff's name will be one that will be considered there. He's been a head coach in two different places. Brian Flores is another name. Brian Flores is a college teammate of Ryan Poles. And I think Brian Flores has learned a lot. The other interesting thing with Brian Flores is he works for the Vikings. Well, Kevin Warren worked for the Vikings for 15 years. Kevin Warren, my understanding, has vetted Flores with in going back to some of his Vikings contacts, and a lot of that stuff has come back very positive. So I think Flores will be in the mix as well. And they have respect for the position they put Thomas Brown in. So there's going to be, I think, at least consideration for Thomas Brown. And I think Thomas Brown will get an interview and a look. And so, those are some of the names I think I'd consider early on for the Bears job. I think it's going to be a wide-ranging search. The Jets, again, I think the Jets are sort of in this position where what they have to offer teams is, we're going to give you an opportunity to come in and win the job. And if you are the general manager or coach that wins the job, we're willing to structure it and build it any way you want. I do think that they are going to be looking for somebody who has a ability to handle being in New York, to handle what can be a circus atmosphere in that Jets building. And obviously somebody who can affect some change. There are some unique dynamics to working there that you're going to have to be able to deal with. So a guy like Aaron Glenn, who's been there before, who played there, I think would be a consideration. There are some guys who have ties to the area as well, and who have who are from New York. Mike Greenberg is an interesting name on the GM side. He has a relationship with Mike Tannenbaum, one of their consultants. He's the Buccaneers assistant GM. He's from Long Island. You have Jeff Hafley, the Packers defensive coordinator. He's from New Jersey. So again, I think having an understanding for that market and an ability to handle that market is going to be an important thing. And then for the Saints, Mickey Loomis has kind of kept this search. It's like a very, I think, insular search. They're doing all their homework, but it's been quiet there. One thing you do here is the connections to the Saints organization will be important. That's why I think Aaron Glenn, that's another one I think Aaron Glenn is going to be at the top of the list for. And then I think another name to consider there would be Joe Brady. They will value experience there, but I think Joe Brady's ties to the organization make him an interesting name for that one. So that's the three jobs that are open. Obviously more: Jacksonville, Vegas, Dallas, New York. There could be more openings coming. New England's a wild card. So I think we'll have 6, 7, 8 openings when we get to the middle of next week. Finally, our third topic is kind of an NFL topic, kind of not. And this is one that I think is very interesting and rich. And, for anybody who missed it, Cam Ward, who was a Heisman Trophy finalist at the University of Miami, started his college career at Incarnate Word, went to Washington State, transferred to Miami this past year after briefly declaring for the draft. Had a fantastic year. Again, Heisman finalist for the Hurricanes. So they go to the Pop-Tarts Bowl. where they're playing against Iowa State. He lights up Iowa State in the first half. Then he winds up sitting out the second half. Mario Cristobal, his head coach, is asked after the game to explain it. He said that those conversations are private. I really think that this is an interesting one for a couple of different reasons. Number one, if this was the plan all along, I actually don't have a huge problem with it. If the plan was, let's let Cam play a half, let's let the younger guy play a half, and if they worked through that and structured it that way in practice, so the backup is getting reps in practice and everybody knows the deal, the receivers, the linemen, everyone out there knows what the score is, and you're getting the backup ready to play so everybody can play at a pretty good level in the second half of that game. It's not the best setup, but I don't mind it. Then it's like fine. It's Pop-Tarts Bowl. I mean, it doesn't bother me that much. What I think would be a different story is if he got the record, he plays the half, and he says, you know what, screw it, I'm done. Okay. That to me would be way different than having it planned out. If it's planned out and his teammates are prepared for it, his coaches are prepared for it, they prepared the backup quarterback for it, then again, no problem. I just think that's the way things are going. These bowl games are glorified exhibitions. That's fine. I think putting your teammates and coaches in a position where you're pulling yourself out of a game on the fly is something different entirely. And I think if he didn't do that, like if this was planned, then I think Mario Cristobal put the kid in a really tough spot by not explaining it when he was at the podium. If he explains it at the podium, this is a 1 or 2 day story. The fact that there's mystery around it gives this story legs and opens up the possibility that it's the second scenario where he pulled himself out of the game on the fly. Look, it's a fair question. NFL teams have every right to ask very serious questions about this. You know why? Because there are going to be points in an NFL season when the guy's going to have to push through injury. Eventually, a guy's going to be in a contract year. How's he going to handle a contract year? How's he going to handle an injury? How's he going to lay it on the line on a week in, week out basis for his teammates? These are real things that can affect wins and losses at the NFL level. And if he's willing to do this as a business decision, and remember, he's already making money, right? Like he's already making a lot of money. So it's not like this is like, this is something that like this was a decision made going from 0 to 60. All right. So he's already making money and he's willing to make a business decision in that spot. Who's to say in 3 or 4 years, he's not willing to make the same sorts of business decisions because he doesn't like the way a contract negotiation is going. All right. And that'd be a question you'd ask of any player. But now we're talking about the quarterback. And this isn't the same as a receiver pulling himself out of the game. This isn't the same as a corner pulling himself out of the game. This is the quarterback of the team. Okay, this guy's absence from the game is going to affect everything else that happens out there. It's going to affect receivers. It's going to affect linemen. It's going to affect the running backs. It's going to affect absolutely everybody. So if a quarterback finds himself if a quarterback is willing to do that in game, and then you look at the Alamo Bowl and you see Shedeur Sanders playing that game out with his teammates and getting the crap knocked out of him for the millionth time. How are you going to juxtapose those two things? How are you going to look at those two things? How are you going to say, how is this guy going to invest in my program? Well, I got to look at how he invested in the last program he was a part of. That's why it's a question. And it's a fair question to ask. And I know the default thing is always to say the player is always right in these situations because players have gotten screwed for a zillion years at the college level. No question about it. A lot of stuff that's happened has been unjust and not right. This is different though. So again, like I think it's on Mario Cristobal, Cam Ward, someone to get out there and set the record straight on what actually happened in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, because whether they like it or not, this is going to be a story when it comes to how NFL teams look at them in the draft. I can tell you that for a fact. Appreciate you guys coming out. We will be back here, I believe, after the Rose Bowl on Wednesday. Go Bucks. I think we'll be coming at you with a Thursday morning mailbag and our normal Breer Report on Friday. No Thursday Night Football this week. Week 18 is right there. We are days away from the end of the regular season, the coaching carousel firing up and the playoffs starting. We'll have it all covered right here for you guys. Appreciate you all coming out all year long. Happy New Year to everybody out there, and we will see you guys on Thursday.